This is F.D.Recovery, where we interview addicts and alcoholics.
Our aim is that through this podcast, we might help you on your journey of recovery.
Thank you for listening. We're live. This is Frank. This is F.D. Recovery. I'm your host. And over here we have...
I'm Dave.
So, and today we have a very special guest. Why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Eric, and I'm an addict.
Thank you. And that's one thing I forgot to say is I am an addict too, Frank.
My name's Dave, and I am an addict.
So we're here today. You know, the goal of this is to kind of share our addiction leading into recovery and, kind of tell our story. If you want to give the audience a little bit of understanding of who you are.
So I had a good childhood, no issues at home. Early teenage years, I fell in love with drugs. I mean, typical, started out with alcohol, marijuana, and then I discovered methamphetamines and ruined my life. Yeah.
So do you remember your first alcohol experience?
No. I remember it was
that
early
good, huh?
junior high. I mean, so I had a group of friends, big into sports and stuff after school, running around everywhere, walking around town, and somewhere along there, I couldn't tell you the first time. It was most likely a beer out of someone's refrigerator, someone's dad's refrigerator, because I could tell you probably summer between 7th and 8th grade is when it all started. And that whole summer was just beer out of people's fridges. One of my group of friends' parents or grandparents or wherever we were at.
Isn't this what was the age again?
Between 7th and 8th grade.
Okay. So it's like 12, 13, something like that, huh? Yeah, that's kind of when I started. We know when you started, it was the 1940s, something like that.
Early 40s.
1968.
Holy shit. So, I mean, was it just off and running, or was it progressive? I mean...
definitely progressive.
Okay.
At that point, I still cared a little bit about school and my performance. So it was mostly weekends, with the exception of the summer, which was most of the summer. During school, it was mostly weekends. And until I started getting into the marijuana a little more. That was like freshman year of high school. Then I would smoke weed before school, on break, on lunch, after school.
You remember if you were smoking and drinking to escape anything, or was it just
at that point,
because it was just...
At that point, it was just the group of us.
Pure pressure.
Well, I don't know about pressure, but yeah, I enjoyed smoking weed. I wasn't a big drinker. I didn't drink like during the week. That was a weekend thing. We'd be somewhere, but I liked smoking weed. I'd get up, hit the pipe, go to school, go smoke a joint with the guys on lunch, the girls, whatever it was. So at that point, it wasn't to escape anything.
Right. Just having fun.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, for me, definitely I could relate to that. It was a lot of fun, but for me, it was to escape. So I definitely know what you're talking about, Dave. But you said you had a good childhood, right? I mean, what did that look like? There was no abuse?
None.
Oh, wow.
No. There were a few weird situations, but ultimately in my home, I never saw my parents fight. No, I can think back all my childhood, and not one time did I see my dad raise his voice at my mom. They had all their arguments and stuff in the room away from me and my sister. So, and I was the odd man out with that situation because all my friends had crazy home lives. So, a lot of my friends' parents, single parents, smoke marijuana, smoke crank. That's where a lot of that came from. Somebody's parents doing this. And, one of my friends, his mom would give us weed. That's how that started. And so I could get it anytime. They had a big house with a barn and all this stuff a couple miles out of town. And she said, you guys all come out here, do whatever you want at my house and don't leave. So I know where you're at, So that was later on in high school when I had my license.
So when the fun started.
That was our safe spot where we could go out and party, and she didn't care as long as we didn't leave.
Right.
So
when did you have to start paying for it?
I really didn't until I started getting into the methamphetamines.
Ah.
Like I never had to pay for marijuana or alcohol. We'd chip in on alcohol, but like I said, I wasn't a big drinker.
Yeah, when you're young, that weed kind of is always free. It seems like when you're first starting everything, it seems a little bit free, but first one's free, I guess, but the weed is just a little bit more.
and back then, down in the city, we're not talking about good weed. We're talking about a brick.
What city? Where?
I was in Yuba City.
Yuba City? Okay, yeah. So you're...
On a good day, we'd get a peach can, but most of the time, we're looking at some nasty brick.
Yeah, that's the same
and
thing.
We loved it.
In Hollister and Salinas, we get the worst seeded, just looks like somebody just did it from their backyard. You're like, what the fuck is going on here? Everything's popping.
It's all coming across the border from Mexico. Yeah. Paraquat weed.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you think? Or not? What do you think? But how did it lead to meth? I mean,
so I remember the first time I did methamphetamines.
Okay.
So I was 16, and my girlfriend at the time, who's the mother of my daughters, her sister lived in Reno, and we went up there to visit for the weekend. And they had somebody owed them money and dropped off some crank. Mm. And they said, "Hey, you guys want to do this?" And I was like, "Sure." I didn't really understand it at the time what it was. And so I did a line, and we played cards all night, and it was over from there. I was like, okay, I wonder if they have this stuff back home.
And you'll sniff it out too.
Oh yeah.
That's one thing I was good at, is always sniffing out.
Yeah.
Just knew who to shoulder tap or talk to it wherever you're at, dude.
Or just to look,
Uh-huh.
What's up?
You holding? What up? What's going down?
Yeah.
So 16. Wow. Oh man, 16. I could relate to that because that's right around. Mine was a little bit before that, maybe like 15, but it was still around that same age. We dabbled with it, and I remember when I first tried it, I fell in love. Did you have that same experience of where, oh, this is what I want to do for the next 10 years?
So everyone was laughing at me the first time I did it because I was all talkative, and I didn't know it. I didn't really understand what it was doing to me. I was having a good time.
Yeah.
And them being experienced users, they're like, and so, and from the next few years after that first time, it was still just kind of a weekend thing. Right. Come to find out, I have a friend back home who sells it, and I had easy access to it. So it was every weekend, come Friday, we get paid, we're going to party. I'm going to fall asleep Sunday night and go back to work Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And fast forward till I was about 20, and me and my daughter's mom split up. And then I started seeking it out in other places, and then I discovered the needle, and that's when the crime spree started.
When did you start the needle?
2021.
Yeah, that's kind of where I started it. We have very similar timelines, at least.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit how that scenario changed the whole, for me, because that's changed the whole using experience for me. That put it into a whole hyperdrive.
Well, prior to using the needle, I never had that I need to have it at all cost. You know what I mean? If for some reason I couldn't find it, I could smoke a joint and just chill. Mm-hmm. I was okay with that. And once I hit that needle, I had to have it no matter what. And when the money ran out, I had to do whatever that meant, steal whatever to acquire it.
Yeah, I think that's where the progression going from fun with problems and nothing but problems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dude, I turned into a fucking weirdo as soon as I entered that needle, dude. I mean, I'm talking about lock yourself in the bedroom for hours on end and just either having sex with the female or masturbating profusely. It changed it. And then instantly criminal minded. It was pretty sickening. I mean, that's the only reason why I wanted to ask you that, because it's like, because I remember that time when I was, because I first started snorting and it was great. And I was like, oh my God, this is I can talk to people. I'm on point. But then as soon as, 21 hit and I started putting in with the needle, it completely perverted it all to an extreme. I mean, don't get me wrong, before that, there was times where I got too spun and, by snorting it or smoking it too, but it progressed to that, and I was up too long. But from the gate, when it came to shooting, it was just all of it all at once. For me, at least, my experience was like I was there. Like it completely, it got me to that point. The only reason I say that is because for you, what did you feel some of those? Did you feel that it went from 0 to 100 real quick when you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And see, down there, Yuba City, I had Indian casinos in every direction. So, and that became
you're old enough to gamble.
That became another addiction, right? And we take a shot in the parking lot, wait about 20 minutes, and then go inside. And I'd spend a day or two floating around the casinos and head back to town and spend a few days at a hotel, head back to the casino. And every couple of years, I would get myself in this big old hole of felonies and do some time in jail and swear I'm never going to do it again and get out and start drinking. So when I was attempting to not use methamphetamines, I had discovered Vicodin. Because for me, that was as close to that
God, I love
high as I could get without doing methamphetamines.
Start off with 9 at a time.
Right.
You got to chew them, though.
Get the
You got to
effect.
chew them. You have to chew them.
Yeah, with a cup of coffee.
Oh, God. Vicodin's no joke, dude. I can relate to that so much. That whole Vicodin trip is.
But it was always bad because everyone that was trying to sell their Vicodin was trying to sell them for money to buy crank. So I've put myself right back in that circle of people.
Yeah.
That's relatable right there. So do you think, since, because my goal here is to kind of dig into some of the trauma and some of that stuff, because I believe that that's mainly the stuff hanging around that's keeping us loaded, all those bad experiences. But you mentioned that you didn't have much abuse. Do you think some of that stuff unraveled due to your choices later in life? Like, what were some of the traumas you experienced, at least through your using?
The majority of my trauma was self-created.
Okay.
And so I had mentioned my daughter's mother, 2 daughters out of that relationship. And when they were both very young is when I discovered the needle. So I was absent for a large portion of their life, like 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So
how old are they now?
23 and 20.
Okay. Okay.
And I have a great relationship with them. But that took a lot of work.
Oh.
Their mom got clean and moved them to Ohio shortly after I started getting arrested. So
Was that to get them away from you?
that was to get them away from the area.
Okay.
She had family back there, and they're all doing really well. There's no addiction in the family back there.
Okay.
So maybe partly to get them away from me.
Okay.
But she had to leave too. She went through Salvation Army program with the kids with her 6 months, and then immediately moved back with her dad's side of the family.
And some of the recovery process, treatment centers, they say get away from the people, places,
Right.
and things.
Well, she realized quickly that there was nothing there for her or the kids.
Right.
I was usually the person, place, and thing that people were trying to get away from. Right? Relocation program for every female that was in my life. That's the reality.
I think all the businesses that got started as a result of us.
Yeah. Okay, good. So, so you think that some of that played in? Do you have any abandonment stuff through that? I mean, because that's like, taking. I mean, obviously, in a sense, you did most of that stuff to the children, right? The abandonment. But
Right.
you think that you sensed some of that too? Because I remember when my ex-wife took my child, there was a sense of like it was out of my hands, and almost like you took my kid,
See, I don't have that towards me. I was the one that did the abandoning. because never did their mom try to keep them from me.
Okay.
I was just so deep in my addiction that I ignored every opportunity I had to keep in touch with them. Yeah, I can't, I don't really hold anything towards me being abandoned.
Okay.
Like that was 100% me.
So it just sounds like you were the asshole the whole time,
Yeah.
huh?
Yep.
Fuck yeah.
I mean,
Well, let's talk about that.
That just shows the work he's done on himself. He's taking ownership,
good.
right?
That's good.
Well, I'm flying out there this October to my older daughter's wedding.
Where is it at?
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. Okay.
I flew out there 2 years
nice.
ago for my youngest daughter's high school graduation. So
That's cool. And how did they turn out? They turned out relatively well. I mean,
yeah, they're great.
good.
Yeah, they're great. One's in school and has a great job along with it, and the younger one already got married, and she's in school, and her husband's in the Air Force. They're stationed in Montana.
So was there any? I was talking about your upbringing, but was anybody an addict in your life? I mean, or did?
It's not in my home,
Okay.
but there was a lot of mostly alcoholism throughout my mom's side.
Okay.
And apparently there was a lot of abuse that I didn't get to see because most of it stopped. My mom has 5 brothers, and I've got like 20 cousins, and I'm one of the youngest ones. So, my grandpa was real abusive, alcoholic. My dad's only brother died of a heroin overdose. But by the time I got old enough to understand, most of that had stopped.
Okay.
From I got uncles that are alcoholics and stuff, but I didn't get to see a lot of that in my home. They fight all the time, fist fight, family gatherings constantly.
Nice.
But
Typical, right?
I can't say that directly affected my addiction
Okay.
because, like I said, in my home, like it was good. It was good.
So the reason why I asked is because sometimes, that genetic stuff, it's like, me and my dad were never close, but I've picked up so much from him, so much abusive behavior. He abused me and we went through these, falling out, but, I guess the reason why I'm saying is because we're like connected to our genetics pretty well with that stuff, right? And my mom, I never met her. My dad, I met her, but it was like, she was in and out of my life, right? And she had to make an amends to me and vice versa. Because when I really got to know her, I was about 16 and I was just like her, right? She was a full-blown addict. She was passed out on the couch, downers, the whole prescription pill route. And my dad was, my dad could have alcohol in the house and not be drunk all the time. So I'd never seen anything like that as well. And it was always like my friends, and that's kind of where I found all that stuff to indulge my addiction in. But where, when I realized like I'm my mom, like that genetic thing was like, holy shit, I'm exhibiting the same struggles my mother has gone through. And that's why that hit me hard. And that's why it's important to that's why I wanted to know if cause like you said, your parents were pretty cool, but it's important to look at the family. I mean, obviously genetics don't, dictate everything, but it's just like, it's crazy to see, at least in my situation, that dude, my mom was pretty fucked up. And I'm like, okay, cause I never grew up with her. So how did I learn that, those same behaviors as her? Cause my dad, to this day, he could have a 6-pack and never crack it, and only on a weekend here and there. Right. So
my dad would have a 6-pack of Coors Light in the fridge, and he would take one and shake it up and crack it and pour it over the tri-tip. And that 6-pack would last through 6 tri-tips. My mom would have a bottle of peppermint schnapps.
Oh God!
In the cabinet, right? And people would come over for Christmas, and they would have a hot chocolate and peppermint schnapps. And the next year, that same bottle would be in there still.
Wow! So, not if I was there.
Right.
Wow.
I mean,
growing up, that was the bad thing.
Every now and then, my dad would have a beer if people were barbecuing, but he had the benefit of watching his brother and some other people in his life really go down when he was younger. So he kind of stepped away from it, joined the military, get away from it all. So,
Well, that makes sense because it's, at least on my end, like I seem my dad was abusive as far as, what he was doing as far as like physically and domineering, but he never showed me any type of addiction. And I thought it was funny when you said the whole peppermint schnapp in there, that fucking would not be in that. They would have to lock. I mean, dude, we would drink all my parents' alcohol. They had a nice little collection, all gone, replaced with fucking some sort of water or something like that. And I mean, we couldn't be trusted. That like for me, when at a young age, it's just like, it was like I was already stealing for my high, So if that peppermint schnapp was in there, dude, I would have been siphoning it off, replacing it with water.
I didn't do that because that would have took away my freedom if I'd have got caught. My parents were pretty lenient as far as long as I give them a call and let them know where I'm at, go for it.
No.
So
you were smart.
I would do that. I'm over here at so-and-so's house. Okay. Get off the phone, back to smoking or drinking or whatever we were doing.
Yeah.
So there was a level of trust, even though so your parents trusted you, and so that this sounds like a pretty healthy dynamic, from a young age, and which is good, which is good also because that's qualities you can carry over into your recovery, because it's kind of your basis. Because I feel like some of the good stuff that I learned when I was young, it like you kind of you kind of steer away from it and you try to come back to it. You know what I mean? So, but it sounds like you had a lot of cornerstones of good teaching in the beginning. I mean, obviously you were still drinking and smoking, but who isn't at 14, or 15, 16? Right. That's one of those things that I've noticed is.
Yeah. I had the same experience with great parents, and, but when my mom and real dad divorced when I was about 3, and my mom remarried when I was 7, and she married a great guy. But I remember right after they got married, my mom got my sister and I driving around town looking in bars, looking for my dad because he was hanging out in bars, and she found him. We went home, and then he showed up, and they got in an argument in the front lobby of the house, and she cracked him in the head with a vase, knocked him out cold. And when he finally came to, it was like, we're never drinking again. And so, they swore they would never drink again. I'm like 8 years old. And that's right when I started getting high.
So that was like your preview and what your life was going to be like.
Yeah. So my stepdad, right, he quit drinking completely. Quit smoking, quit drinking, didn't have an issue, right? My mom, I don't know what it was, but she was sneaking the bottle, right? And back then, back in the 60s, they would, doctors would prescribe diet pills, right? And
diet pills.
Yeah, diet pills, right? And she'd have shoe boxes of these diet pills up in the laundry room, right? My sister and I would go in there and sneak those things and steal those, and so real quickly, mine went from. So
was that kind of like your uppers experience from the gate?
Yeah.
So diet pills back then. I mean, obviously, I don't want to age you, but I mean, what was some of their diet pills?
Black Beauties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, what do you kind of know what's in them, or? What?
Man, it was. She had all sorts of stuff, man. Okay. She had stuff that would get you going 1,000 miles an hour, and stuff that would knock you clean out.
So because I do know, I've heard of not urban legends, but just like back in the day, they were putting a lot of that, at least some of the uppers in just regular diet pills and stuff like that. And and so I mean, I don't know that because all I know is everything was watered down by the time I was born. All the good stuff sounds like it was back in the day.
Yeah, it was. It was like, and back then there was so much cocaine, right? But the part is that I got addicted at a very young age. I lost the power to stop on my own power, and so it was a trip. But getting back to Eric's experience with the family, having a good, healthy family atmosphere, I had that, right? What got me using? A few chicks that wanted to smoke a joint. You want to smoke a joint?
It's all good.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty chill. So
like,
it's safe to say that this addiction that we're dealing with, and alcoholism and drug addiction, I think that it doesn't matter how good your upbringing is. Does it kind of matter about your background? When you're affected by this stuff like alcoholism and addiction, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have that biasness like, oh, he had a good upbringing, well, let's bypass him. It sounds like from both of your guys' experience, it doesn't fucking matter. When you're an addict and you put in, doesn't matter your background, skin color, nothing like that, it'll grab a hold of you. Because I know a lot of people personally growing up with that never continued the route I was doing. Right. And they partied with me, they snorted cocaine, crystal meth, all that. And it didn't, they were able to drop it real easy.
Yeah.
We're talking about multiple friends. And I was the one that was like, oh my God, it stuck with him and now it's affected his whole life. And so
I always wondered about that, right? Is it pride that gets us to that point? Well, I can outdrink you.
Yeah.
I can do more than you, and I always wondered, is that just a pride thing at a very young age?
I think that at least I can probably say a little bit for me, but there was, for me, like at least what drove mine was, it was a lot of fun and it made me feel something rather than what I was feeling. Cause I felt really fucking horrible about myself. I was a super overweight kid growing up and with a lot of abuse, mom not there, stepmom being abusive. So it was like, for me, it was just like, I'm feeling something rather than all these emotions that I'm feeling with my, quote unquote, horrible home life. So for me, I think it was a mixture of both, right? Because I did love that whole fact of being the last man standing, especially while you're drinking. And that happened a lot. And I used to pride myself on it. I'm the last man standing all the way through my 20s. And I'm just getting shit-faced drunk and watching everybody pass out at the party and going, yeah, I'm the man. Yeah. And just stupid. Not even like why. It doesn't even matter. But, lightweight, it mattered to me,
Well, I knew that I was going to do more than you because I'm going to put the sack back in my pocket and I'm leaving. You guys are starting to do too much of my shit and I got to go.
I'm hiding it. Yeah.
I got a bunch. I'm going to do yours and then I'm going to go do mine.
That's so true.
Yeah.
I would do so much drugs and I would get to a point to where I forget where I put stuff. And I was really bad with that. So no chicks and stuff didn't like hanging out with me because I was super forgetful, right? And then
What's your name?
I would turn I would have these fits of rages on top of it. So I was super unstable. So I'm like, they're like, dude, I can't hang out with you, bro. You're
check.
Yeah, dude. Like, I'm pocket checking people, dude. Like, it's bad. I held a whole, obviously I'm past the statute of limitation, but I held a whole house hostage one time with a buddy of mine, and there was like 7 or 8 people in there, and I would not let anybody leave. It's not like I gag tied them or anything, but it was just like, nobody's leaving, pocket check. And we eventually found the dope, and it was in the freezer. They stole a bunch of our heroin at the time, and it was in the freezer. And we're like, well, we know we didn't put it there. It was on the bed last time we seen. So somebody finagled it, got all jammed up, and then decided to put it in the freezer.
Stash it in the freezer,
Yeah, and we eventually found it, and the dope dealer, this is in South Lake Tahoe, came up and was like, he came in, he's all, how much was stolen? And it wasn't very much. And he's all, you guys are holding a whole house hostage. This is the dope dealer
for a quarter gram.
This is the dope dealer trying to like be the voice of reason. And he's like, dude, it's not that much dope. Just let all these people go. It was that bad, dude. It was that bad. And 2 of them were my really good friends. And they're like, why are you acting like this, Frank? And I was just in that rage, dude. So
that's hilarious.
Sorry about that.
we've heard sorry before, and that was not it.
Right.
Make amends right here on the podcast.
Actions, buddy.
Yeah. So, well, my daughter was using my tablet, and it's all connected to all my Apple addresses. So now all of her little friends just decide to try to call me, and she's not even in town anymore. So yeah, no, cool. Yeah, they were calling all the time and playing like Robux or whatever the hell that all the kids are playing. But so you started using meth at 16, right? It progressed, and it when did you really have serious consequences as far as like law, and when did that occur?
Oh shit! 6 months after I started using the needle, did my first county year. First article in the newspaper. Big
first claim to fame.
Crimes free.
And what I mean, obviously, don't go too far into it to protect your own anonymity. But like, what was some of the behaviors that you were doing?
Oh, we were just robbing anybody we could.
Okay. All right, so
robbing, stealing, whatever. Cars. I didn't go into too many houses.
Yeah.
But. Stealing whatever I can get my hands on.
Anything that wasn't bolted down.
Right.
As Tyler would say. Anything that wasn't bolted down, it was coming with me. Okay, so you did your first year, so that had to have been a lot of, because, I mean, were you on probation or anything by that point?
After that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And they started you off with a year?
A county year, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, I had been arrested before, but...
Oh, okay.
This was the first serious. It started off with 24 felonies, and they're doing the fear thing.
Yeah.
It was a bunch of second-degree burglaries and receiving stolen properties, and I took one of each, and they gave me a county year and some probation afterwards. Which, I'm doing the whole going to the dentist and the ER to get these little prescriptions of Vicodin so that I could piss clean for probation. And that wasn't working, so I just would take off.
Yeah, I remember I had...
You're a runner?
Yeah,
always.
I would run and hide, motel to motel. And
yeah.
I remember calling my probation officer and was like, he's like, yeah, just come in and we'll chat. And I'm like, well, I have a warrant. So yeah, just come in and chat. And I'm like, you're going to arrest me. And he's like, oh no, we're just gonna talk. I said, fuck you, hung up the phone, right? And I got so heated, right? I was pissed. I'm like, this motherfucker, who does he think he is? And so I call him back, got his voicemail, thankfully. Got his voicemail, and on the county voicemail for his work at probation office, I'm like, you motherfucker. You piece of shit. You know damn well you're going to arrest me. I was like, fuck you. Catch me if you can, bitch. Oh, dude. And I think back to that.
The chase was on.
They caught me like, they always catch me, dude.
Oh, yeah.
And then, but from that point, every place that they knew that I was hanging out with, the door was getting ran through. They were doing fucking room checks and shit because they knew and they'd catch my scent every time, and they'd just make it out. They did it to my one of my homeboy spots, ran through there, checked all his all his rooms, and then next thing you know, they're doing it to my mom's place. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just anarchy, dude.
Back then, they used to turn over every stone looking for you.
No, they would. I mean, I don't know what's going on now. I mean, there's a lot of. Granted, I wish some of this stuff was there back when.
Yeah, they don't chase you anymore.
Kid, dude.
They know you're going to mess up again. You're going to surface sooner or later somewhere.
Well, with the drugs now, they're just going to wait for you to die. I mean,
yeah, you're not serious.
I'm not laughing. Like when I was using methamphetamines, never did I have to worry about this shot might kill me. With the fentanyl mix and everything now, it's a different ball game.
Yeah,
they don't have to chase you. A good chance you might just die.
Yeah, you're gonna end up with a 911 call, and paramedics and everyone shows up, and they Narcan you back, even if you got a warrant or dope on you. They don't arrest you for that anymore. It's crazy.
Well, nowadays, I mean, I really wish some of this program was there back when, because when I was like defeated, and I think that if I would have gotten to a program right away, I think I might have had a good chance of staying clean, like probably 9-10 years ago. But they weren't looking that way. They were like, fuck you, you know what I mean? And they just sent me to prison.
Yeah,
So
you get your first term.
yeah, they decided to the first, because I'm telling you, I was getting held in contempt a lot because I would talk shit to the judge, and I was not a good person in the courtroom. And I'm not saying I was a badass or anything, but I was just really defiant.
Lacking a little etiquette.
Yeah. And and talking shit to the DA and to the point where they knew who I was, but then I finally there was this stuff that was happening spiritually for me. And I know now that it was spiritual, but back then I was just like, I was starting to have a huge conscience, and I was starting to feel some stuff, and I hadn't necessarily been doing that. I can't say that I never had a conscience, because that's not true, because I always knew right from wrong. But it was affecting me a certain way, and I was like starting to feel sad about it, and like I needed to change something. And I was like, man, I see all these people going in and out of the system. And I realized at that point, I'm like, man, this is going to happen to me. And I'm going to be in this cycle forever. And I do believe that my prison sentence was justifiable, of course, and also necessary, because by the time I got there, I was so fried my brain, because I was shooting a lot of drugs. And I was starting to have schizophrenic stuff, and I was hearing a lot of things. Everybody was reading my mind, and I went through prison and reception like that. And it was crazy too, because when you're in prison, at least in reception, every yard, we had 2 yards because they shut down the chow hall. There was a removal all the time. So there's something super violent happening. And then you were laying on your stomach for an hour until they figured it all out, depending how bad the issue was. So I'm just like going through this experience, and I'm like, this is where I'm going to be if I don't try to change something. And I noticed all the insecurities that all these guys were having, and like the tough guy syndrome that people were doing. And it's just like, wow, this is my reality, and I'm gonna be here for the rest of my fucking life if I don't change something. So I was going through this informational exchange with the universe, I guess, if you want to call it. And all these people were getting placed in my life, even on transfers, right? When I get transferred back to Southlake, it was just like there was some God in it, and what the message for me was just like, you need to change something. And I wish it happened sooner, and I wish I was able to do that in rehab, but I did in prison. So, I mean, for you, that first county year, did it wake you up, or how did that experience
go?
Not
really. I mean, all my friends were in there. Like yeah. I said, I did the whole typical, I'm not going to do this again, blah, blah, blah. I think I probably drank that night getting out.
So off from the gate, huh?
I told myself it's the methamphetamine that got me arrested.
Not the alcohol.
Right.
That's not I don't even like it.
I don't commit crimes when I'm drinking.
Yeah, I used to tell them I don't like it. I don't like it. It's not even my thing. I'll do it every now and then. Just full-blown alcoholic by the end of it.
I didn't understand the addiction part of it. Yeah. It's only when I do methamphetamines that I get in trouble, so I can drink and be fine.
So how long did that last? At least, did you stop playing that game and just went straight to meth all the time, or did you do that alcohol route multiple times?
Every time. Okay. Every time I got out, it would start with that, because in my mind it was the methamphetamines that makes me commit crimes. And in 2010 I got out and I came up to Grass Valley. I had a friend from high school that lived up here, and I was on probation down there, but lived up here, and so I had to report once a month. So I got introduced to the bars in Grass Valley and started drinking and go down and report to probation. And about 6 months later, they transferred my probation up here.
Were they testing for alcohol?
Yeah, but I wasn't, I was partying at the bar on the weekends. I wasn't drinking every day.
I know. I just remember that for a while there, at certain times, they wouldn't stress on you if you had alcohol in your system for a second there. If your controlling case had nothing to do with alcohol, I just remember some people telling me, I never experienced that, but I know some people would tell me, unless they were full of shit, which could be the case, they were like, oh, I can still drink. I can still drink on probation and parole. And I never had that experience because usually they knew I was drunk. You know what I mean? Because I come in, I never caught a drug case or an alcohol case or any DUIs, but they knew because every girl either that I was abusing at that time or something would be like, he's fucking loaded. He needs help. So
I always had alcohol terms.
Yeah.
And of course, drug terms. Always.
See, they always dropped my drug charges because the theft-related felonies were so much worse. I mean, I never had, a pound. I always had a little bag and a needle and a whole bunch of stolen property. So they were like, yeah, we'll just get rid of the drug charges.
Yeah.
It took about another 6 months of being up here before I started getting loaded again. And then I went on the run from a probation up here back down there and caught a prison term down there and got transferred back up here for the controlling case I was on the run from. Mm-hmm. And, in my mind, I still didn't understand that I was an addict, but my lawyer approached me and, hey, would you be interested in applying for drug court? What's drug court? And she went through that explanation and I said, yeah, that sounds good. I had a prison term out of there and I was looking at a lot more up here and I ended up getting approved and I had they kept me up here to finish out my prison term. So I sat another 13 months in county jail up here waiting to get the door-to-door transfer to rehab. And that's kind of where my journey into recovery started.
Started there on.
Yeah.
Do you think that, you think you gave it an honest try in the beginning or you just, because I mean, I know that it's kind of a layer thing for me. Because I went to 5 different rehabs, right? And each time there was like an onion peeling happening, and like I was getting more used to the idea of actually staying sober. How did you think about that?
I had went to a few rehabs, 30-day ones, yeah. And I didn't care. I was trying to get out of jail. With drug court up here, I was lucky because I had a good amount of guys that had been in drug court for a while that kind of took me into their wing and explained, this is what's going on. This is what's expected. The drug court case managers themselves said, you're going to get a sponsor. You're going to work the steps. And we have someone in mind, and that ended up working out great.
Okay. How long did you stay sober during that stint?
I got loaded 2 weeks after I got my 5-year chip. So
yeah,
what's funny is I was going through Serenity House and I kept hearing about this handyman that is now loaded and he's fucking crazy and he just got busted. I'm like, oh, I don't even know who you guys are talking about. Yeah, his name's Eric. And I was just like, okay.
Hey, the story could be worse.
Yeah. They said, the funny thing is a lot of people were saying how cool you were and how much of a good guy you were. And obviously it was more sombersome, going like, fuck, he's out there again. Right. So, but I think it's funny how our paths at least crossed before they crossed, you know what I mean? Because I was going through Serenity House. You had just relapsed. It sounded like, and they were kind of up, in limbo with who they had, and I think there was a couple replacements, but that rehab kind of took it hard. You were a big part of that situation, and I mean, obviously you probably know that, but from my perspective coming into it, I just wanted to tell you that you were a big part of that because it was still lingering in the conversations amongst your coworkers there. So they were and they were all bummed. You know what I mean? I mean, how do you think, at least that time around, what do you think led to some of your relapse?
I got a laundry list of things. So I can tell you first and foremost that I didn't understand the importance of step 3. That was
explain to the
turning my will and my life meaning thoughts and actions, over the care of God as I understand Him, I didn't understand the importance of that. It was just something that, like a prayer that I read through the step work, and then I was on to my inventory. I didn't realize that that's a decision that I have to constantly remake throughout every situation, throughout every single day, because I can step back into my will at any given moment.
Because it's a tug of war.
Right.
There's like a tug of war happening. Yeah.
Spiritual warfare all day, every day. And I'm still, you know, that's something that never stops.
Yeah.
That's a growing experience. With my fourth step, I was as honest as I needed to be at that point. You know?
As honest as you were willing to
Right.
be.
Exactly. I left some stuff out there, you know?
Well, yeah, it's a whole trust thing. Yeah, I get it.
And, you know, and I would have told you when I first got clean, I would have told you that everything was cool up until I got loaded. But getting
That's
arrested.
what you were saying.
Right. Getting arrested.
I remember.
So
I do.
Getting arrested, getting a new sponsor, and really taking a look at stuff. That whole last year of being clean, my life was spiraling out of control. And pride, ego, you know, my marriage fell apart. Working at the rehab, and I was also on the drug court team.
So you were involved.
Yeah, but I was kind of on this little pedestal, right? And I had taken my job working at the rehab as me being of service, right?
Yeah.
So I eliminated myself from being of service, and I didn't know this at the time, right? This is looking back, discovering
because
this.
it's a fine line.
Right.
When you're helping people at your job, it's super easy to be, hey, I'm in recovery, but that's not.
So I eliminated my connection with people, so that when my marriage fell apart, my life started becoming a struggle. I had too much pride and ego to reach out. You know, all the people I was really close with, I had put distance between us. You know, I had gotten married, I had 2 babies, and I was too busy. You know, too busy is what the word is.
Not enough time.
Right.
I remember every time I saw you, it's, Eric, how you doing? You go, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Good. 'Cause
Yeah.
I was fucking high. You know what I mean?
Good and high.
I just go, oh, yeah.
So, you know, we failed to mention this earlier, but you want to tell everybody what your clean date is.
My clean date is January 25th, 2020.
2020. Well, now we know next time to ask them that from the gate, so the audience knows exactly what's going on.
All right.
For the listeners out there, this is our first podcast, so you're witnessing history in the making.
History in the making.
Or not witnessing, you're hearing. So I mean, that's a good amount of time, dude. I mean, that's a good. I mean, what are we? 2024.
We're
now?
approaching that 5-year point in January.
Okay, so where you screwed up last time,
Yeah.
and so what do you think that you're doing different this time to kind of maintain that?
Everything. I mean,
Like what? I mean, because some people are at that point in their recovery of what you're going through, or haven't had that first 5-year mark and don't see the signs that you've once went through, and now you're at it again. So what do you think that you're doing different thing now, and how can you explain that for some of these people? Because that's, you know, that's some of
the step work is actually the easy part, right? I'm grateful that I have a sponsor that has beat into my head the application, right? Because during that last 5 years, I became really fluent in the literature, and I could stand and speak and make it sound great. But I missed the part of actually applying it to my life, especially the spiritual principles part, like my day-to-day conduct, how I treat people. Also, the term higher power, right? People throw that around. I threw that around. I put a lot of focus on figuring out just who my higher power is,
and for the sake of
that connection.
For the sake of people out there, if you want to explain,
Jesus Christ.
Okay, good.
You know, and your higher power is your own business.
Yeah, obviously.
But for me, I was raised in a household that's Christian, but my mom was not a big fan of organized religion because she's seen a lot of stuff go on in churches that, you know, some churches are a business. We'll say that. You know? I don't want to get into any of that, but so I had a lot of knowledge. You know, I did go to church as a little kid with my grandma a lot before she passed away, holidays and stuff. So I saw a lot of that. I heard a lot of that. half decent understanding of it, and I turned away from it through all my addiction. So when I got clean this time, I said, okay.
So you found a way to infuse.
Let me tell you this: the day before, I'm a firm believer that there's no such thing as coincidence. Everything happens for a reason. Mm-hmm. The day before my clean date, I got raided, and I had my 2 sons with me.
The day before your clean date?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my clean date because I was in jail that day. Okay. I was high as a kite the day before that. I got raided. I had some firearms. I had my kids with me.
I like the way you put that, the day before my clean date.
I like that. We're not bullshitting, right?
Yeah, I like that.
So,
the day before my clean date.
Nope.
So yeah, man. And so they didn't take my kids. They allowed me to call my kids' mom. You know, they had every reason to. Right?
Yes, they did.
And so they allowed me to call my kid's mom and have her come pick up the kids. And I take that seriously, right? Because I've seen so many people lose their kids. Mm-hmm. And throughout my addiction, in the back of my mind, it was never like a forefront thought. I knew my mom was there, right? If I go down, she will be there to help take care of my kids. So I made bail and went right into rehab when I got arrested. And then I knew what to do, right? I knew what to do. Surrounded myself with people. COVID hit a couple months after I got arrested. So that dragged my court case out.
Oh, yeah.
It took almost 20 months.
Everyone else's too.
It took almost 20 months for me to get sentencing, battling back and forth with the DA. And I ended up getting, a bunch of community service, some fines, restitution, and a suspended sentence.
So do you think, going back to that higher power thing, the way you just told me, you think obviously something as horrific as the pandemic, which really sucked, and in your case, I mean, that was almost something that worked out in your favor with the courts.
Yeah, that, pandemic is, to me, it was just a bunch of garbage, right?
Yeah.
Fear stuff. But what really hit me hard was about a month after I got sentenced, my mom died, really unexpectedly. And that was one of those, at this time I had done a ton of work in recovery with my sponsor, all kinds of therapy, anger management, parenting classes. And so losing my mom really opened my eyes to, I got 2 little babies, with COVID hitting and all this fear everywhere. I'm like, okay, I'm going to prison and leaving my kids in this cold world without me. That was the worst fear that I had ever felt in my life, right? And so for court to work out in my favor, which to me, I see the blessing, you know what I mean? Because on paper, I deserve to still be sitting in prison today. And then to lose my mom.
I can relate to that.
Right, yeah. To lose my mom and to be able to have my kids, that's not a magical coincidence to me. You know what I mean? Those are blessings. And I'm not going to slap God in the face. I've been given this opportunity. So the only way that I could keep this is to continually do the work. You know what I mean? Every day is a learning experience. Every day is a test. Right.
And I so remember that when your case was, when you're fighting that case and the things that you were willing to do from the beginning, right? Get into treatment and parenting classes weren't part of the deal. You went ahead and did it. Anger management wasn't part of the deal. You went ahead and did it. All the other classes that you did were to benefit you as a parent to be the example for those kids later in life, whether you went to prison or not. And that was really powerful. And of course, all that stuff that you did, providing the certificates of graduation of different classes that you did, really dictated a lot as to how the outcome of that case came out. Yeah.
And I have a lot of feelings around that arrest because, my older son, he thinks it's funny and he'll laugh at me, but he'll tell me, Dad, remember that time you got arrested?
That's not good. It's comedy though. I mean, at least the kid got.
He laughs his ass off. He's 9 years old now, but that that hurts. I'm like, shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really have to reteach, like
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have to put a lot of effort into that, and
that's that damage we cause out there and not realizing how we affect it. But now that you have some recovery and some work behind you and a lot of God in your life, you start realizing that's not okay. As funny as it is to hear a 9-year-old say that, but in the deep root of everything, you're just like, fuck, man, when we talk about trauma, that's stuff that he's going to have to unravel later, and starting to realize in the cause and effect of our actions. It's like, okay, when I do a bunch of 4th step and things like that and do the 5th step with my sponsor, you're just like, okay, I can see everything that's going on here. And now, like, okay, what about my kids? Look what I did to them. You know what I mean? And only owning your part and seeing your part and stuff kind of helps you get ownership of that and go, okay, this is what I did to my ex-wife. This is what I did to my kids. And, making peace with that, he's laughing, but you're just like, you look at it going, oh shit, that's something he's going to have to unpack later. So it's important to see those connections, right? Because I can relate with that. Because a lot of the stuff back now, when you can crack jokes about and stuff, and it's fun. It's good to keep a light heart about this, such tragic stuff. But it's like that's stuff he's going to have to unpack later. That and I can relate to that because I did that to my daughter. Just the abandonment. And
they were super close with my mom.
Yeah.
They lost her. They lost their grandpa on the mom's side, then they lost my mom, and it's just been rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's especially during that whole process of is that who they went with when all the stuff went down? Is your parents, or who did they stay with?
Yeah, they have their mom's in town too.
Okay, so
so we have 50-50 custody right now, but
okay,
my mom took them all the time. They loved it. So that's their grandma time. So I robbed my parents of the opportunity to be grandparents to my daughters.
So there's some grief there for those kids and you that still has to be unpacked a little bit.
Oh, we've been we work on it. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah, that's good though. That's good. That's what recovery will do for you is you can have those open lines of communication, especially with your children. Especially they're so young, they don't understand some of those in-depth, complex ways that we know this life affects us. Right. And we know later and it takes recovery and us bumping our heads a bunch to really see it. But for them, they're just so young and so innocent. It's important that we work on ourselves so we can be that guiding light for them. And so they can work through that stuff and be able to bounce that off of, and we can be healthy in that process. Cause that's super important. I didn't have healthy parents that were trying to guide me, and they did their best, I know, but it always came back to, they were very selfish. The way I am with my kids now, it's like I'm trying to not be that. I don't want to be selfish. And I was selfish with my first daughter, but the second daughter, I have almost another chance to write some of that stuff and live through living amends, you know what I mean? And I'm doing, I have that chance to kind of write some of that stuff, at least with myself and between my higher power, right? So I just wanted to add that to that because that's super important that you created that. You created that line of communication, and that's so precious. They're gonna benefit from that so much.
Well, it's a different world today, right, than when we grew up. I'm 43 now, and so much has changed, even in the last 20 years. And I'm in this mode where if I don't teach my kids the best I can, someone else is going to teach them what they want, and that's a really dangerous game to play.
And even if you do, there's still going to be that influence. Right. So that's why you have to. So at least give them, because no matter how you look at it, they're going to have influence, right? No matter where they turn to. So it's important that you be that person in their life that can try to guide them towards the right way. Because I didn't have that, I know that you guys had a decent upbringing. And kudos for that, because that's great. I really, people that have that in their life, that's a really good thing. I envy it in a certain way, not to where it's harmful, but I'm like, man, I really missed out on that. But I find that now through, some of my relationships through, my wife and my friends in recovery, they feed that part of my life so I can heal some of that and have that kind of love in my life to where I didn't really have the best support growing up. That's why it's super important to have these people in your life that really care about you, that you can joke with, that you can have fun with. Me and my wife, she keeps me honest in so many different ways. So it's super important, like being in recovery, that, going back to that damage for me, it's just like, now you can create that for your kids, where you can be that soundboard and that voice of reason to help them through this process of life. Because
well, he's been able to, from my observation, I get to work with Eric quite a bit. The example that he sets for his kids, what he's doing today, right? And is not just the direct amends, but the living amends. And we talked about the upbringing and your parents, and when your mom passed away, then it shifted gears to now it's just your dad and your relationship with your dad, which has just flourished.
And I really, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I really want to commend you on that, because going back to what Dave said, is what that whole flourishment of, like you're making decisions now to make sure that, you got a lot of stuff going on in your life through business and also personal life, but you're keeping that trajectory of going, my dad only has a certain amount of time left, and I'm factoring that in, because this is our conversations we've had, obviously. And I really want to commend you on that, because a lot of people don't have that foresight to be like, this is important and I'm going to prioritize it, because, so I want to give you kudos for that, because that's pretty badass.
A big part of that is, I wasn't done making my amends to my mom when she died. That bothers me. I made some promises to her and I've kept them all, but I would have loved the opportunity to show her. She got to see me with almost 2 years clean. She got to see me quit smoking cigarettes. That was her big thing.
Yeah, I remember that.
She said, yeah. She wanted me to quit smoking cigarettes more than doing dope. But and she got to see that, and I haven't had a cigarette in a few years now.
Good.
But I do have some regrets around that.
I want to talk about how you're going to overcome those regrets.
Well, a big part of that, like I have a lot of gratitude for one, because I didn't have the relationship with my dad by my own doing.
Right.
And like I said, nothing is coincidence. So my mom dying and my dad being in that situation that he was in by himself, and me being clean, and just the way everything fell into place, I've been able to develop that relationship with him now. I've been able to show him all the things I wanted to show my mom.
Right.
So,
relationship.
The gratitude is greater than the regret and the sadness.
Right.
By a long shot.
Your relationship with your dad is amazing.
Right.
Love watching that.
Right.
So you're talking earlier, about your upbringing and your in church and stuff like that. And tell me about your spiritual growth with your father today.
So again, like I said, I didn't have the great relationship with him. So I've actually learned more about him in the last couple of years than I've ever known.
Yeah.
But
we love your dad, by the way.
Right.
We love your dad.
Man, he's one of my number one teachers when it comes to faith. Like his perspective on it, and eliminating a lot of the unnecessary stuff and going straight into the Bible. He runs a Bible study that I'm a part of.
Yeah.
And we have conversations every single day, every day. Whether I'm sitting at his house, he's sitting at mine, we're on the phone, we're at a meeting together. He started participating in some community outreach program stuff that I'm in, and we do a lot together.
Yeah.
That's powerful stuff. That's that God working in your life.
Right. Like a lot of his friends are dead. And he's 75 years old. And he became friends with a bunch of my friends who call him all the time. They have relationships that have nothing to do with me. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
He's got people that call him for advice all day long.
Yeah.
He goes out to breakfast with people that were my friends that are now better friends with him.
Yeah.
So he's got some purpose now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. I remember when that was going down and your dad started coming around with you, and how inspired I was, because fuck, man, that's, I had a real bad relationship with my dad. Even to this day, we don't talk too much. We don't hate each other or anything, but it's real. It inspires me to try to, be on that path with my dad. But, seeing him in the meeting with you, at the Project Heart meeting, that shit's badass. Seeing that really, it's inspiring.
Right.
Because
so he was military, but he was also Department of Corrections for 30 years. And so
the black sheep
working in the prisons, just waiting for a seeing you.
So he's seen all the programs throughout CDC, CDCR.
Yeah.
And everyone fails. Yeah. Everyone comes back. Yeah. Nobody gets clean. In his mind, like, the programs don't work. So for him to come into something like Project Heart and see it being successful, like, his whole perspective is shifted.
But in many ways, he's correct. Us addicts, even with something as powerful as Project Heart, we and AA and NA, we have a slim fucking chance. For the audience, what's your clean date, Dave?
November 6th, 2010.
That's a lot of fucking time.
Yeah.
That's a good
start.
Yeah, a good start.
I don't necessarily look at it like that anymore.
Yeah.
As far as chance, like, in a rehab, they'll tell you, well, you got a 2% chance. Like, to me, I got 100% one way or the other, based on whatever conscious decision I want to make.
Yeah.
Do I want to pick up the phone and call someone because I'm struggling?
So now you have that choice,
right?
I think, at least for the people in the beginning, they could hear that and go, well, I don't have a choice, right? Because I remember my experience was super different in the beginning, where I was just like, I was struggling, right? And the only choice I was making was, I'm going to try not to get high. That was base minimum. I wasn't making any life choices, man. And most of my stuff was really aided by Dave and also Robert. And eventually I get there, right? But in the beginning, I was scared, man.
You were a wreck when you got in treatment.
I'm the only one that was a wreck.
No.
The only one. My hat's off to anybody that can come into a 12-step room and get a sponsor and get clean and sober without having to go to jail for a bunch of time first. That's the only way I could ever do it. Like, I had to go to jail first, and then rehab, and then be out in the world with some time. Physically, to get the physical part of it out of me.
Yeah.
For me, it was the last time I went to jail. That's when I hit that place of desperation. I'm like, I am so tired of this.
How old were you when you?
50 years old.
50 years old.
It wasn't the number 50. It was the half a century mark. Okay? And I told myself, last time I was in jail, I said, I'm half a century old and I haven't figured this thing called life out yet.
Dude, that's important that you said that, because a lot of people out there are still struggling, and a lot of them feel like it's too late. But
it's not.
Exactly.
And I tell you what, I was, and I do H&I in the jail. I do CBT, classes in there sometimes. And there's a guy that I couldn't stand, right? There's a guy I couldn't stand, what used together, 20 years ago. And I didn't like him in recovery after I got clean. I just couldn't stand the guy, right? And I was telling him about a month and a half ago that he says, man, you've been doing this a long time. What is it? What was the breaking point for you? And I told him it was a half a century old. I'm sitting there thinking, he goes, and he just started projectiling tears, right? And he goes, you got me, right? And this is a guy that's always, dominating a meeting, is just so disruptive and all the time. It just drove me nuts. And anyways, he got out of jail last Saturday. And what does he do? He calls me.
Wow.
And he said, dude, that half a century thing broke me. He goes, what do I have to do? I says, this is what I'm doing tonight. Show up.
Yeah,
Next thing I know is, we're going to FFR and the guy's singing Jesus songs to the guy sitting next to him. It's like, wow. So, all I can do is share what I did, right? And what's working for me. That's it. I'm not the guy that's going to say, you need to do this, you need to do that. Because that's not how I was taught, right? Yeah. I was taught by a guy who says, this is what I did, and here's where the information is. It's in the literature, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous.
So I think, piggybacking off that, to give some of the listeners an insight and obviously this is not a Christian podcast, but we're open to everybody's beliefs and religion, man.
Sure.
That's what the whole higher power of your choosing is all about, right? I love hearing about how somebody got closer to God through Jesus or through meditation or whatever got them there, because now they're better for it. Right. So getting to that point where, you hate this guy and the power of God later in an FFR meeting can connect you guys. And that's what recovery is all about. Yeah. I know a lot. I mean, I talked to a guy this morning that has a job at one of my places and I couldn't stand him. I tried to fight him twice. He was one of those guys domineering in a meeting and he was always loaded and he was just laughing. He's like, you almost kicked my ass twice. And we were just laughing. I said, well, and it was always over stupid stuff, right? Because speaking out of turn, crosstalk, and I would get fed up in an NA meeting and I thought I was the police, and I'm
NAPD?
Yeah. And there I am, being the guy willing to put himself in harm's way with this guy that obviously is sick. And I know that now I gotta, it took some of those situations like, hey, this guy's sick, right? I was there once. I need to have some compassion. But it took those incidences to kind of help me learn the right way to go about that, because I don't want to beat anybody up and I don't want to get beat up. So I have to try to live in a spiritual manner to where I'm not fucking doing that shit, because in the end, everybody loses.
So what Eric was talking about earlier is about the application part. Yeah. Right? Application of spiritual principles, not in the affairs that we pick and choose, in all our affairs, especially when we don't have the option to pick and choose. When you're applying, hope and faith and honesty and courage, all the spiritual principles in our lives, when we really don't want to, is when things work, right? And we get to go home at night, put our heads down on the pillow and say, you know what? I did okay, but what could I do better? And there was something that talking about different higher powers, and I came in here, when I first before I got clean, I thought I was like the Antichrist. Serious. I mean, people, hey, can I pray for you? No, go pray for someone else. But there's something in the big book that says, that we wish to say that any alcoholic or addict capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. All spiritual concepts, because I don't know what's going to work for me. I don't know what's going to work for you. But I have to open my mind, right, to whatever it is. Buddha, Muhammad, Spirit of the Universe. Not the doorknob, it's going to turn on you. And certainly not the lights in the ceiling, because they're going to burn out, right? I need a higher power that's going to love me, forgive me, guide me, direct me, and someone that I can lean on, And I've found that through here, and I'm grateful that I have teachers that have taught me their path, and it was enticing enough for me to try it, right? And I just want more of it. I'm spiritually starving. I want more, Still an addict. More is better, right? I find myself, a few months back, hooking into, 3 more things to, for more spiritual growth, and one of them is that Bible study with Eric's dad and Eric. And it's really cool that we're studying and learning that, history and what's happened in the past.
Yeah, taking it that next to dig deeper into
Absolutely.
to what you're believing in and all that.
Absolutely.
So we are nearing the end. We have about 8 to 10 more minutes. I wanted to circle it back to you, Eric. And right now, at least in your recovery, where are you at as far as some of the stuff that's working, and kind of giving a closing synopsis of someone who's maybe going through the same struggles as far as been through that 5 years, because I think that's a key point. You went through that 5 years and now you're doing something else different, and you can feel the difference in this 5 years and that last 5 years. I'm only assuming based off what you've been talking about. So there are some people that are that are resting on their laurels, and I mean, what are some of the stuff that you it's absolute must that.
So being 4.5 years removed from the drugs, right? It's it would be my attitude that could take me out. So mixing my recovery with my faith a little bit, and trying to really know what's going on in my head. Like, you hear tolerance is a virtue, right? But tolerance of evil is not a virtue of Christianity. So that's my line in the sand, right? And it's easy to understand what's evil, right? Really easy. Yeah. And 99.9% of what I see in my day-to-day life is not evil, right? Somebody that has a different opinion than I do is not evil. Somebody struggling is not evil, right? Yeah. So it's really important not to let stuff that's not evil have me get into a negative mindset. Right? Because I think somebody's not acting how I think they should. Like that in the past, that would set me off, and so I really got to pay attention to my mindset, my thinking process. We know our problem is not the drug, it's our thought process. Yeah. And that will take me out if I don't pay attention to it. And like I said, for me, it's really easy because I can see evil really clearly nowadays, right? The spiritual warfare side of it. And so I got a good understanding of what's not evil, right? Mm-hmm. And like I said, most of what I come in contact with is not evil. So I need to be tolerant. And then what can I bring to this situation? Like I said before, I got out of service because I was working at a rehab. So service is different for everybody. There's a billion different types of service, right? Sometimes it's being tolerant. Sometimes it's being present. What am I bringing to this situation? Because if I'm not bringing something positive to this situation, I'm doing a disservice to whoever it is, whether I like them, not, you know what I mean? Because like I said, most of it's not evil. It's rare that I come in contact with something that's evil. Yeah. So what am I bringing to this situation?
So it's safe to say that monitoring your in and out mindset is the cornerstone of at least the difference now, as opposed to your last 5 years. It sounds like to me that you've really developed this self-awareness that allows you to kind of take a step back, and as opposed to before, you were so egotistical. At least some of the stuff you shared with me, you were so involved with yourself and the thought of yourself and the pedestal that you spoke about. And what's changing now is that you've released some of that, and you're able to look at yourself in a different perspective.
Yeah, and I've also had to fix the rest of my life, because who wants to be clean and miserable? Like honestly, if I can't control what goes into my mouth, like that, how can I control what comes out of my mouth? So I started taking a look at my diet. I started taking a look at self-discipline, doing what needs to be done before what I want to do, like paying my rent, like all those important things, keeping that roof over my head before I go out and blow money. I had to learn how to be an adult. I had to realize that every adult in their life, especially people that have struggled with addiction, has to come to this point where no matter what you've experienced in your life, You have to let it go somehow. From this point on, I got to be an adult. I got to handle my responsibilities. Life is short, so I got to figure out how to make myself happy within that point without hurting others or manipulating situations. So, like I said, being removed from the drugs, I got to figure out how to live. I don't know if normal is the right word, but I got to figure out how to function without, without being a fool.
So another part of it is, the 12 step, the principle of service.
Right.
And if selfishness is the root of our troubles, right, then how do we turn that into selflessness, right? Yeah. And through service. And what forms of service are you into today?
I'm into everything. I mean, really, I sponsor some guys. We do some community service projects. I answer my phone. I show up for people best I can. I set boundaries. I got to be of some service to myself too, and to my kids. So, I mean, I do set boundaries, but I do put a lot of effort. I was not a good sponsor before. I like the idea of being called a sponsor in my first round of recovery.
So it was all ego.
Yeah. And I had a few guys that had no desire to work the steps, so it worked out perfect. I mean,
Yeah, I can sense some of that right now in my recovery. I'm really trying to work through that on my end, but I can really relate to that ego part. It's like, oh, I'm a sponsor,
right?
So I can definitely relate it to it. But I'm also, my recovery, the way it's working is I'm actively going in every Friday with rehab, and those are where I pick up most of my sponsees. And it's no fault of myself or them. It's just most people that go through rehab have a very slim chance, right? So I'm definitely just trying to plant seeds and trying to be helpful where I can, but most of them don't call me. Most of them relapse, and it's become really hard. At least my recovery, where I'm like, it's really hard to see these guys that I have a lot of hope for. So right now I'm trying to deal with that, to lessen that ego part, because I could definitely relate to that, where it was all, ooh, look how I'm looking. I'm going into a rehab. I'm a good person. I'm not the piece of shit I used to be. So I can definitely relate to that big time.
See, going into a residential treatment facility is by far my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those people don't understand that the difference between clinical treatment, being in rehab, and recovery. Because your clinical treatment, no matter how good it is, when you hit the end of your days, you're going to get a certificate and out the door you go. Right. And so recovery, it doesn't stop. It's a lifelong process. 10, 11, and 12, we continue to daily inventory, prayer, meditation, be of service. That doesn't stop. Okay. That's the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So we're nearing the end. I was on a podcast for recovery, and they really did something I liked, and I kind of want to switch it and make it our own, as far as theirs was the craziest story that's happened in your recovery. I want to know about, which I really enjoyed, but I want to know about the most spiritual experience that you've been going through, at least in your recovery, that you can note back. And what was the most spiritual experience that you felt in this recovery?
It's definitely been this conversations with my dad.
Okay.
By a long shot.
Nice.
And I've got many of them. My spiritual awakening was not the burning bush moment. It's been what they call the educational variety, where it's a series of raises of awareness. And I've had massive ones sitting with him, 20-minute conversations, where my whole perspective and understanding of my relationship with God has changed.
Okay, yeah, because I think that's important. I mean, can you explain to some of the people listening that when you feel that spiritual experience? I mean, what does it do for you? I mean, like, at least what was some of the conversations? Just brief. Obviously, I don't want to pry, but
So it takes fear out of my life.
Okay.
When I say I gain understanding, it takes away some of the unknown.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Because, like I said, being a Christian, I read the Bible, and that's based on my own perception. Everyone else that reads it's based on their perception, and people can taint that. You know what I mean? Take bits and pieces of it. And my dad, having lost my mom and being retired, has really dove in and tried to gain this great understanding of it. And he shares that with me, and we just click. Because, you know, being clean, I've been to church and I've been in a lot of different studies, and I've heard a lot of people's opinions. And I do this thing where I like to pick stuff apart and go back and check facts and stuff like that. And
Yeah, very analytical.
Right,
yeah.
right. And sometimes that confuses me because I like to listen to people and I think that they're right until I go back and be like, okay, so he was a little off here. And so then I sit down and talk with my dad about that. And like I said, just the more that I understand, the less fear of the future I have.
All right. Well, we're reaching our time here. We're trying to keep it to at least an hour and 20 minutes till we start off. Thank you, Eric, for coming and sharing some of your recovery
for having me.
us. Yeah, thank you. This is F.D.Recovery. My name is Frank, the host.
Yeah, my name is Dave.
Yeah, and our Eric was here to share some of his recovery with us, and we look forward to our next recorded episode with the next victim of
The next victim.
the next interrogation.
Right.
All right. Peace.
Peace out.
Thank you for tuning in to FD Recovery. A reminder, be kind to yourself on this journey of recovery. Also, call your sponsor, get connected to local support groups, and for one day at a time, stay clean and sober.